In 1971, Hamilton launched the Pan-Europ, which housed the movement known as the chronomatic, or caliber 11, which was the first automatic chronograph movement ever created, introduced in 1969. Now, 50 years later, Hamilton re-released a limited edition version of the Pan-Europ, this time housing its caliber H31, a caliber developed specifically for Hamilton by ETA. This reissue was suitably limited to 1,971 pieces and was a smash success. A year later, Hamilton made black and silver versions generally available, and you can still buy those today. The retro racing-inspired design of the chronograph would extend just as well to a three-handed automatic version, and I think Hamilton and collectors knew it was coming one day. And just before Baselworld this year, Hamilton announced that the Pan-Europ Automatic would debut in the fall. Watch lovers are eating this one up for its looks and price. If you've ever seen the chronograph, then you'll instantly recognize this watch as belonging to the Pan-Europ family. Gorgeous blue sunray dial with polished and applied markers and the same white chapter ring you expect from the Pan-Europ. Without either a chronograph or a tachymeter, this version of the Pan-Europ feels a little less like a racing-inspired watch, but the red hashing for the first 15 seconds matching the red seconds hand is a nice touch. Overall, it's a reductive design in the way that the three-handed automatics can be, but such wide-open dial real estate is all too often a temptation for brands to find features to fill them. Unfortunately, Hamilton took the bait, introducing a weekday aperture alongside the date and interrupting the deep blue dial with its asymmetrical inclusion. Now, like the chronograph, I'd have rather Hamilton stuck with just the date and placed it at 6 o'clock. The Pan-Europ design continues to the unidirectional bezel, notched for easy grip, which carries a familiar color and font. I'm impressed with the overall quality of the case finishing. Radial brushing on the 42mm cushion case contrasts with the polished edge of the bezel, and again with the beveling that accentuates the curves in the case, resulting in a luxurious mix of surfaces that bring the case to life. Turn the watch over and you're treated to a view of Pan-Europ's caliber H30 through the exhibition caseback. In 2014, Hamilton introduced several new calibers designed for the brand by ETA. What's most impressive about these movements are their 80-hour power reserves. I have to say, an extended power reserve is one of the few practical improvements that brands can make to their movements that really pay off. Taking the watch off on a Friday evening and picking it up on Monday morning to find it still running is a wonderful thing. Other than the 80-hour power reserve and the skeletonized rotor and perlage on the movement, the only other collector-facing aspect of the new caliber is its beats per hour. Caliber H30 beats 6 times per second instead of 8, so when you watch the second-hand sweep, it's not as smooth as you might be used to. Sized ideally for a modern sports watch, the Pan-Europ is lovely on the wrist. The case is 46mm lug to lug and 12mm thick. Weighing 103 grams on the leather strap, it's a wrist presence you'll feel but never tire from. The Pan-Europ comes with 2 straps and a spring bar tool to help you swap them. The first is a black leather rally strap with a red underside, although it's kind of more salmon colored than red. While I'd have loved to see a truer red to match the red seconds hand, it's a minor gripe when you consider how comfortable and attractive the strap really is. Lastly, the signed deployment buckle is top-notch in looks and ease of use. For 2014, Hamilton developed new deployment clasps that are leaps and bounds above what you would expect at Hamilton's price points. The second strap that comes with the Pan-Europ is an ultra-premium NATO strap with rich coloring and high-quality brushed hardware. NATO straps are everywhere, and I know they're a staple to most collectors, but I'm extraordinarily impressed by Hamilton's version of the NATO, and I'm glad more brands are introducing their own nylon and including it with the watch. Your run-of-the-mill $15 NATO might be tough as hell, but something like this adds a touch of class to an otherwise rugged strap. However, actually putting on the NATO is such a hassle it's almost not worth it. The spring bars are too fat, leaving little room between the case and the bar itself, so you could never really thread a NATO, especially not Hamilton's heavy-duty version, through it as you normally would. If you want to wear the NATO, you have to put the spring bars on with the nylon set in place and then push really hard until the bar pops into its holes. Worse, the spring bars are curved, which works beautifully on the leather because it allows the end of the strap to flow with the curves of the case, but it makes fitting the NATO impractical. The Pan-Europ Automatic retails for $1,195. The $1,000 price range for Swiss-made automatics is fairly crowded, and there is even no shortage of automatics with Swiss movements that can be had for about $500. So what makes the Pan-Europ even worth considering? It's another example of the whole watch done properly. While I was disappointed that the NATO didn't work out as well as I'd hoped it would, I've never been much of a NATO guy in the first place, and given the looks and quality of the rally strap, I'd opt for the leather 9 times out of 10. The leather is padded, flexible, and comfortable, with a deployant clasp that reminds me of something Oris or Baume & Mercier might produce. When it comes to wearability, Hamilton is punching above its weight class here. Sure, the design is obvious and simple, but it's still handsome, and the movement behind it really adds some convenience with an 80-hour power reserve that you won't get from anyone in the sea of brands using off-the-shelf movements.